Has gun control become a losing political issue in 2020? Hey everybody, welcome back to another video here on Marksman Radio. Now I am uploading this video on Marksman TV as it does apply to a video I did a couple months ago called Is the Gun Control Debate About to Change? I think that this video is a good follow-on to that video, so if you want to go see that, check that out. Now, I do have this channel, Marksman Radio, which does more long-form political and business-related content like this. So if you want to see more videos like this, please go check me out over on Marksman Radio. The link is down in the description. So moving on with this topic, has gun control turned into a losing political issue in 2020? I think this is actually very interesting, and I think that there's actually a lot of truth to this, so we'll go ahead and move through that. Now, as far as the election has ramped up so far, we basically just had the conclusion of the DNC National Convention, which happened last week. In that, of course, we had Joe Biden elected as the Democratic candidate for the seat of the president in 2020, and then Kamala Harris as his VP. Now, during the three-day event, I did notice that there was very little attention given to gun control. There was a 2-minute spot for Everytown and a Moms Demand action video, which aired on, I believe, the third day of the convention, which amounted to about 8 minutes of coverage. Now, keep in mind, these are political affiliates and donors of their campaign. So, of course, you know, Moms Demand Action and Everytown and the Bloomberg organization is going to have to get some lip service, some coverage during the convention and also during the campaign trail that we're going to be seeing over the next few months. That's to be expected. What we really need to look at is the meat and bones of the acceptance speeches to get an idea of the main topics that will probably be honed in on and addressed during the campaigning of Biden and Harris. Now, I did listen to both of those. Each one was about half an hour. Joe Biden's was a little over 30 minutes. Kamala Harris a little under 30 minutes. If we compare that to Hillary Clinton in 2016, her acceptance speech for the nomination was just shy of 1 hour. Now, keep in mind, she was speaking to a loaded room. She had to stop about every minute or two for applause and shouting and whatnot, which of course Biden and Harris did not. If you did take out all the applause and everything, Clinton's speech did end up being about 12 minutes longer. So Joe Biden, his speech was a little bit on the short side. But if we compare the two, and I actually listened to Biden's speech, Harris's speech, and then Clinton's speech, and there were a couple interesting themes and takeaways. So first of all, if we look at Clinton's speech, she gave about 2 to 3 minutes of talking to each one of the topics that she wanted to address, her main line issues. Now, of that, at about the 49-minute mark, she did begin addressing the gun control issue, which she did speak about for about 2 to 3 minutes. Like I said, all of her other political issues, she gave about the same amount of time to. If we switch over to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, it was actually very much, if anything, of a passing blip or passing statements. I'll give you an example. At about the 16-minute mark of Joe Biden's acceptance speech, he mentioned guns in this capacity. He used the statement, I quote, "Children worry about climate change, social and racial inequality, and being gunned down in school." That's it. Being gunned down in school. 5 words. That's all he said in his 30 minutes that even related to gun control. Now, when he did give, he mentioned that Kamala Harris was going to be his running mate. He did give a list of her accomplishments, of which one was Kamala has taken on the gun lobby. But that's it. In the entire 30-some-odd minute speech, that's all he said. Kamala Harris also, like I said, her speech was about half an hour. At the 12-minute, 29-second mark, as she gave a list of accolades to Joe Biden, one of those in a long list was enacted assault weapons ban. Again, that's all she said. There was no talk of policy. There was no talk of taking a hard line on the gun control debate. All they mentioned was, if you just amounted to what was about 12 words over about a 30-minute speech and a 30-minute speech, so about an hour, versus the full 2 to 3 minute dedication that Hillary Clinton had given. So that gives you an indication of the changing in the importance on the debate. Now, it's also something worth noting, and it's very interesting, that if you take Hillary Clinton's speech, and like I said, I listened to these in succession to one another, but if you take her speech and then you take Biden's speech, they are basically The exact same. They are pushing the exact same narrative. It's basically all tailored to being the opposite head of the coin from who President Trump is being characterized as being, which is a racist, misogynist, homophobe. And they spent the entire time talking about racial inequality, gender equality, things like that. Clinton did spend some time talking about ISIS because we were on a war against ISIS at the time. If you basically take out the ISIS and the gun control component from Hillary Clinton's speech and you put in coronavirus and how much Trump has been a failure on the coronavirus issue, and that's their words, not mine, you basically have the same gist of the same topic. Not saying that Biden took a verbatim ripoff of Hillary Clinton's speech, but it's just very obvious that the sort of the political narrative there has not really changed at all in the past 4 years, except for gun control. That was really in large left out of the convention and the speeches, which is very interesting. Let's talk about why. And that's something that I mentioned that I saw coming, that the gun control debate was changing. And I had a hunch that this was something that was going to be largely left out. Okay, we've been noticing this as you and me inside the gun community. We've been noticing that there is a very big change. There's a very big paradigm shift in the gun control debate. When we are talking about a political election, especially one like the one coming up, which there has been probably no greater divide than what we're seeing right now, the line between Democrats and Republicans has been no more clear than it is right now. It's very clear that right now, if you're a Democrat or a liberal, you're voting for Biden. If you're a Republican or conservative, you're going to vote for Trump. Now, save for people in the middle. So the moderates, the people who are very slightly left of center, the people who are very right of center, I think that is the pool of people that they will be vying for in the election. Anyway, when you're vying for people in the middle, you have to stay away from issues that people in the middle might be turned away from. Now, 4 years ago, a lot of people, a lot of moderates, actually I would say were probably more prone to being pro-gun control, especially if they themselves were not gun owners. Like I've said in my previous video, if you don't own a gun, it's easy to not have a dog in the fight, especially if you're seeing news coverage every day about shootings and, the narrative constantly being pushed, we're constantly in trouble, we're constantly in danger. If you get a dog in the fight, if you become a gun owner, it becomes a lot less easy for you to be pushed into wanting that your personal property and now your perceived interest in your own self-preservation to be taken from you or banned or restricted. What we have seen is a huge increase in the number of new gun owners. My last video on the ammunition crisis stated that there's been about a 40% uptick in new buyers, or 40% of the new buyers, which have equated to about 10 million since March, have been new first-time gun owners. So what is that, about a 4 million person increase? Now in a country of 350 million, that's not huge, but a lot of those we could probably say are probably more moderate. People who were more conservative, probably prior to all of this, already saw a vested interest in gun rights. There's people who are probably left of center or moderate who didn't, and it's probably safe to assume that a majority of those people who bought guns probably fall into that camp. Now, the other issue that I think is pushing people away from this debate is we have a juxtaposition of removal of firearms versus removal of police. Now, both are basically the epitomes of safety and security in this country. It's always been said that we can ban firearms because we have a police force here to protect us. It's a very difficult argument to make when we also say that we want the police forces to be defunded or removed. Than to say you have no aggregate safety net underneath you and we're not allowing you to create your own safety net. So that's going to be a very difficult narrative to push. I think if debates happen, and I really hope that they do, I see, and if I were President Trump, that is the card that I would play. I would hammer in on that as hard as I could to basically say, look, this is the party of both defunding and deregulating the police and banning your firearms or your means of protection. So that's a very very lethal combination there that they can play against themselves, which I think is a huge reason for why they're going to be avoiding this topic in general. Now, unfortunately, a lot of moderators from these debates are people typically from CNN or MSNBC, like Rachel Maddow or Anderson Cooper, and typically I believe that in cases like this, they are going to softball the issue. If Trump can get in and get on the topic, I think that that's exactly how he's going to dig in on it. Now, the other thing that really electrifies the moderates on the gun control debate is the constant, like I just mentioned, the constant and never-ending hyping and sensationalizing of gun-related homicide and mass shootings and things along that line. Now, of course, right now, mainstream media is pushing the massive narrative of the epidemic, and they're using it to basically leverage an attack on Trump, saying that, all these deaths and everything is his fault and unemployment is his fault. And again, if you go back to look at those acceptance speeches, they spend like 15 of the 30 minutes basically harping on exactly that point. If you start letting other forms of sensationalization like gun control, mass shootings, things like that come into play, it takes away from that narrative, and I think can then create too much confusion and pull their base away from the main sort of angle that they're taking here in this election. And again, without all of the reporting, I mean, if people just have the impression that guns exist, and yeah, sometimes people are hurt or killed by them, but otherwise they don't really seem to come into play in our normal everyday lives, they're not going to be so amped up about getting out. I mean, keep in mind, you got to get voters out of their house to go out and vote on these issues, and right now there's just not a lot of hysteria built around it. People aren't going to be as amped about it. So I think that that's another issue that is widely being ignored. A perfect example of this is you had a 5-year-old kid that was executed with a firearm in his front yard about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Okay, if we went back in time in 2016, probably at the DNC convention, that family probably would have been invited to get up on the stage and talk about what happened. That little boy's picture would be plastered everywhere. But of course, it just showed up as a blip on the national media. In fact, it was mainly conservatives who brought up the topic. Now, a lot of people say that it's because of the racial issue, that the person who shot the little boy was black, and the little boy himself was white, and that's why they avoided it. There's probably a lot of truth to that. I think, again, they're trying to get away from any topic that can sort of guide the conversation away from COVID and how much of an epic failure President Trump has been in, saving us from the coronavirus. So I think that's probably has a lot to do with it as well. Now, does that mean that I think that if Biden were to win, that he would avoid trying to put through any type of legislation on the topic? No, I think he will. He has a comprehensive gun plan on his website. I actually, like I said, did a very long form deep dive analysis on that plan. It's a little over an hour long. It's over on Marksman Radio, so you can go check that out if you're interested, or if you're new to guns, you want to know what those policies mean or what they're getting at, go check out that video. Link down in the description again to that channel. Go check it out and subscribe if you find it interesting. I definitely think that, yes, if they are voted in, they are going to definitely move on that. Of course, harping on the gun control issue won't matter if they have power. But again, I think they're going to avoid it up until that point in time. Also, the second prong to this is I believe gun control in and of itself is mainly, I think federally it's really played into as a wedge issue. It does a very good job dividing people. I think it's obvious if you look at the fact that President Obama had a 2-year of a full Congress and his presidency and did nothing on gun control. President Trump also had a full Congress for 2 years plus his presidency. He also did nothing on gun control, nothing in favor for us. Obama did nothing against us. You could say that actually it's funny enough that President Trump has actually done more against gun rights in his time in office than Obama did. With the passing of the bump stock ban and the red flag laws that he's been in support of. So that's just something to consider. What I think is going to happen is it will remain a federal wedge issue. Not a lot is going to be done on the federal level. I suspect even if Biden were to win, probably not a lot is going to be done, even if he has a majority in Congress. It's just my expectation. Again, that doesn't mean to stop, fighting in favor of gun rights. But where I see gun control taking a lot of ground is on the state level. We're seeing that in Virginia. We're also having Bloomberg, Everytown, and all these different organizations now setting their sights on Texas as a potential toss-up this year, which is very interesting. That would be like losing the capital of gun rights if Texas were to fall. It'd be like the second Alamo. So that's really where I think a lot of attention is being focused on by anti-gun groups, and where I think they need to be met in kind from pro-gun groups. Now we are seeing ground on the magazine capacity ban in California, where that's being challenged again. Now, keep in mind that did happen 2 years ago when the decision was overturned. They got to keep their magazine capacity ban. If that does make its way up the ladder to the Supreme Court believes that that is unconstitutional, then that will become legal precedent, and we'll see similar lawsuits from other states that have implemented the same thing. And I think that's really where progress needs to be made, is on the state level, because that's where the attacks are happening, just like in Virginia. But anyway, that's my analysis. I do believe, again, sort of to summarize, I believe the gun control debate issue, at least this year, is a losing issue. I think it will come back into prominence as being a hardline topic. Again, like in years past, gun control was like one of the top 3 issues that Democratic politicians always harped on. I believe that will come back when this whole COVID thing is behind us. I think when COVID no longer becomes so politicized, and I think the politicization, if you will, of COVID will definitely fall back very quickly after the election, no matter who wins. I think they're going to try and get back to the wedge issue things. They're going to, of course, harp on race disparity issues in this country, immigration, of course, guns. I think we're going to get back into the national sensationalization of gun violence, school shootings, things like that. I think there actually has maintained to be I would say maintaining the course of shootings that have been reported. If you go on Wikipedia, there's a comprehensive list. It's just none of them get any coverage, so you would be led to believe that they're not happening. Also, people would make the argument that schools haven't been in session. There hasn't been large gatherings. There's been tons of large gatherings, and there are a lot of schools in session. We don't see a lot of these shootings happen. I believe that's because these people, would-be shooters, know that they're not going to get any attention because everybody's focus is on COVID. That's just what I believe, and I think that that's further evidence for why the sensationalization of gun violence and shooting typically leads to these little idiots taking guns into crowded spaces and shooting people. That, along with mental health issues. So, again, for the second time, I'll sum up there. If you guys have any questions, agree, disagree, please let me know down in the comment section. I would be interested to read that. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to this channel. Also, go check me out again on Marksman Radio. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and leave you off there. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You're watching Marksman Radio and Marksman TV. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.